Not sure why our first test isn't working out. Let's take a look at that again. So I'm setting a breakpoint here, and I want to watch what's going on here. I want to see if we're actually going inside. Yeah, this isn't going to work. So what I'm testing for here is to see if the text is actually 0. The string 0. With strings, you can't really compare strings this way. What that does is it compares the object references, and those will be different. So this will never be true. So the way you do this is you say equals. And then you pass in the string you want to see if it's equal to. Now this time, hopefully when I run it, it will not put a 0 there if there's already one there. Let's try it. So here's my 0. I did it the first time. Oh, we want to say not equals. So the way you do that is you put a not operator right at the beginning. So what you're saying here in English, probably need to put in a comment because it's kind of complicated. If so here I'm pressing the 0, and notice it's not adding any zeros, but I put in a 2, and now we have 2's going to the right. We have a special case, I guess, on all the other ones. We have to see if it is equal to 0. If it is, we want to erase the 0. If all there is a 0 there, we don't want to have that preceding 0. So we have to put that in the other ones. It's a similar test, though. So here again, but this time, if we see that it does equal 0, then so if it does equal 0, it's complaining. We want to clear the line first. So we would say see if there's a clear. No. I guess we'll just have to set it to the empty string. Okay, so there's our empty string. In either case, though, we want to append. So taking a look at the button 1, the behavior we're hoping for is that when the 0's in there, we want to hit 1, and we want it to replace that 0. If there's anything else in there, and we put in a 1, we want to append it. I think that's the behavior we would like. Check to see if there's just a 0 there. If there is, we want to replace it. If it's a 0, or if you're typing in a 0, then you don't replace it. You just leave it there. If you type in anything other than a 0, it should replace the 0 with that number you typed in. So let's try this again. So we have 0 here. If I press 0 again, it's not going to add a 0 to the right. If I type in a 2 or a 1, that's the one I changed. See how the 1 replaces the 0. So anyway, that's the idea there. But again, this is really wordy. And me being a kind of an old C programmer, I don't like having to go out and set this text and get it multiple times. So what I'm going to suggest is putting in a local variable instead of type string, and we'll just call it text inputted. So the text that's already been inputted, and we can set that equal to this so that we don't have to keep writing that. I'm not sure if the compiler likes it if we do that. I guess it doesn't complain. That way we're only getting the text once, we're not getting it twice. By creating a variable, we get rid of one function call. Say we want this to work pretty quickly. It's just a good idea. If you see yourself repeating the same line of code, you need to take a look at it and see, you know, is there a better way to do this? So this is the better way, I think. You create a string called text input. It's going to hold what was already inputted. And then it's going to see if what was already input is not equal to 0. If it's not, then we'll append the 0 to the end. So we want to do this in each of the event handlers to save us some time. See how we're calling it twice here? So what I'm trying to do is avoid having to call it twice. And use that same structure for all the other ones. Now I think our logic is sound. Let's try it. So 2. Yeah, 2 didn't work. Yeah, it's not clearing it. Okay, so I'm going to watch it in here to see what's going on in the debugger. Actually, let's do this. There. So we put in a 1. I'm trying to figure out why this isn't working out. Watching our variables down here, we take a step. And here's our string, and it does have a 0 in it. We check to see if it's equal to 0. So we take a step. One step. See how we're inside here now? This should clear the text in the control. Take a step. Here's where my mistake is. Notice how text inputted is equal to 0. I'm changing the text box instead of changing the text inputted string. Because when I do this next line of code, it takes that text inputted, which is 0, and appends on the 1, and that's not what we want. So if we let it run, then we see we've got the wrong input. So the mistake is here. So this is just a string, so we can just say equals. Looks a little nicer that way too. Try this one more time. Yeah, it seemed to work that time. So we take what we learned with 1 and we use that for 2 in the other ones. So now our code is looking pretty good. So again, all the numeral buttons should do the same thing. The only thing that really changes is what number you. There are opportunities to factor this even more, but for now we'll leave it like this. All right, so let's look at which button we want to do next. Going back to our design, and try to find one that's simple. Well, first we probably should have a clear button so we can clear it out and get ready for the next input. That would be simple enough. So let's try that. I'm double clicking on the clear button, the C button. It creates an event handler for me, and then all we're doing really here is we're taking the text box and we're going to 0 it out. Text input dot set text and we'll set it equal to the empty string, and that will effectively clear it. Problem is, we don't want to clear it to blank. We want to clear it to the 0 that it started with. So let's do it that way. Okay, so I'm typing in my numbers. I say clear. We're back to where we started. So it's starting to behave like a calculator would. I'm realizing there's a really important key that's missing right now. Doesn't look like we have a decimal point. That's kind of important, don't you think? So we'll get to that, but let's try one of these functions then. I'm going to just double click on the button. We'll do this reciprocal one. That one's pretty easy. Let's try this one, the square root one. So you go to the design window and double click on the button you want to add stuff to. And see how it makes these event handler frames each time we come in? So we want to show the result in the text box of the square root of whatever number's there. But first we have to figure out what number we're talking about. The data type I think we should use is a double. So we'll say double. And here, this is where we use math.squareroot. But it's in here where we have to go get that text. We have more work to do there. Yeah. So first we have to go out to that text box and convert that string of numbers into a double. So I'm calling that number the operand. Operand means the thing the function operates on. So it's like a number. Like 2 plus 5. 2 and 5 are operands. Plus is the operator. And we're going to set that equal to double dot parse double. And then we'll take our string we got in from the text box. So we'll say text input dot get text. What that does is it goes out to the text box, goes and grabs the text, uses that value as the argument into parse double. Parse double converts it into a number and then stores that in the operand. So now we have the number in the operand. Since we know what the operand is, we can put that inside of our method. And then we say result. Now just because we've calculated doesn't mean that we're going to be able to see it on the user interface. So here's our input, here's our processing. I guess our input is here. Our processing piece is here. And now I want to show it in the text box. So we would say text input dot set text. And we want to set it equal to result. But the problem is with result is that it's a double, it's not a string. So now we have to convert this back into a string. The easiest way to do that would be you put in the empty string and you concatenate it with the result. The compiler will see that result is a number and this is a string, so it will convert automatically the result into a string. And then we'll use that to set the text in the text box. So let's try it. Okay, so I have 2. And I say square root. Looks like it worked. What's the square root of 1? Yeah, square root of 1 is 1. That makes sense. I don't have a 4 button, so I can't test it directly, but 2, I clear it, 2, square root. So that's how you go about adding a function to your calculator. I would use the same setup, get the operand and result, go and get the number from the text box, and then take that operand that you grabbed, run it through your math function, creating the result, and then take that result and put it back on the UI, because now you're done. I think that's enough for today. I would finish up wiring up all the buttons and then I would start working on these functions.